Hello and welcome to Stephen University. This is the one, the big one, the one you've all been waiting for. Don't worry about our interview with Zach Callison. That's the last episode. Unimportant. Irrelevant. We're revisiting...
It's nothing compared to this.
We're revisiting the episode that has been most... It became a running joke, but I still feel like it obviously started in quite a genuine place. We're rewatching Cat Fingers, or we've rewatched Cat Fingers, and we're going to be reanalyzing it. I'll very quickly echo that I feel exactly the same as I did about this the first time. It's probably one of the weakest episodes of the show. I don't hate it, but I acknowledge it is deeply flawed. But there are some ideas at its core that I think keep it from being intolerable. Which is pretty much, I think, what I said in the first podcast. I pretty much said, the idea of like his relationship with his dad being tested in a new way here, because his dad was like, gem stuff, I'm out of here, and then because the gems were gone, he was forced to go to his dad, and his dad was able to help him. That idea, at its core, is solid. And there are a couple of good jokes. And while I don't agree with their choice to go full horror, I think it is effective. The combination of the music and the imagery is quite disturbing. So I think it works on a few levels despite its flaws, which we discussed ad nauseum in the last podcast. But I am very curious, Chris, how you found it on rewatch.
Well, on rewatch, like all joking and overreacting aside, I legitimately still hate this episode.
Okay.
I'm still really angry at it. Like, let's just talk about how we got the interview with Zach. No, right. So there's just a mirror. There's just loads of problems. Right. It's not how shapeshifting works. I realise now is a new problem. Like, whenever we've seen shapeshifting, it's you shapeshift to, like, Amethyst always remains purple. And people don't shapeshift literally into the objects. They're still themselves shaped like the objects. Also, they're in complete control. So whenever Amethyst shapeshifts, she remains in complete control. She is the cat, as opposed to Steven somehow forming new multiple cats that are just like cat-like cats. And he's learning how to do it. Maybe he shapeshifts differently. Maybe his shapeshifting is more powerful, because obviously he's, spoilers, assuming everyone's caught up, he's Pink Diamond. So maybe that means he can literally shapeshift into the thing. Maybe. Fan wanky explaining. Still,
I don't think you have to go that far for some of those. With the shape.
Well, let me finish my list. I've not finished my list, and then we'll dissect. I want to try and remember it all.
Okay.
His super wash at one point only has one piddly jet on. Later on, all three are turned on, but it's like, the super wash. Oh, there's one jet. Garnet at the end. What we've learned is that we need to trust Steven. Nope. Or Steven can handle himself. Nope. What you've learned is that Steven can go to Greg and they can work as a team together to solve the issue. Steven not clarifying that doesn't feel like Steven to me. I think he's really aggressive when asking for the fry bits. Like, there's the usual fry bits, but he's like, make me fry bits. Why don't you make your own fry bits, Steven? Ronaldo isn't like, oh, what is this? What's the situation? He's just snapping a picture for the blog. He doesn't want to find out more. It felt like cheap promotion for the blog. Almost like, blog, wink, wink, that'll come back later. Why is Greg not charging the mayor for the service? Like, we can get loads of political favours. Just get the cash, get the money for the job you've just done. It's poor business sense. He's lucky he becomes a millionaire later. I really didn't like it still. And it's creepy and weird. And I will give you... You still there?
Yeah.
Cool. I will give you the creepiness. That I will give you, because it's unfair for me to criticise it for being creepy, because it's meant to be creepy. It's clearly meant to be creepy.
Yes.
And in that sense, it's effective.
Yes.
But I do not like it, Dan. Like a stubborn child. I still don't like this episode.
Well, let me cover a couple of the points there. First of all, the mayor thing. I think he was going to charge him until his son, sprayed the mayor with water. I think if I ran a car wash and my kid sprayed a customer of mine with water, while he was coming to collect his vehicle, I'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry about that. Yeah, the car wash is on us. That's just good customer service.
Okay, point taken.
I think that's what it was more in response to. The political favours thing was a joke before Stephen then sprayed the mayor with water. I assume he was originally going to be taking his money. Let me think back to some of your other quick points. Let's in terms of the shape-shifting thing, there's a couple of factors. First of all, I think you're right. It is weird that the cats are sentient, but you could very much argue that Stephen is applying that sentience to them because he's way more powerful than he's able to control at this point. You're right, it's fansplaining, but I think that fits with the lore of the show, and it wouldn't surprise me if that had been
have other people said that before then?
I don't recall ever reading it. It is an interesting point.
Because although I was angry, it's a damn good theory. Some good fansplaining on my part, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly could be considered sort of foreshadowing to his powers. I think it's
because if he gets that right, if they actually brought it back in the 150 episodes that have preceded this, or no, I think that's preceded. Yeah, not preceded. Anyway, then I'd like to see that explored more. The idea that he's like the ultimate like Harry Potter-esque shapeshifter. He can literally transform into other beings. I think they've not brought that back yet.
Well, I think the difference is as well that Stephen's part human. So he has mass, and like maybe that human fleshiness being added to Jimmy sorts of powers gives him a different level of mass to the other gems, which makes his shapeshifting different. You could argue.
I also think it's weird that they ripped loads of holes in his t-shirt but didn't stretch his t-shirt.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of some of the other points because you made so many. That's why I was hoping to stop and get to each one.
The Frybo.
The fry bits. I mean, he was pretty aggressive the episode before, demanding fry bits. To be honest, there's a reason the joke is
the episode that we've watched.
No, the one we skipped.
So
Frybo
cheeseburger. Frybo, right?
Yeah. Frybo goes, I think, just before this or two before this, and we've skipped that now because this is the first time we've actually jumped forward a couple. He's pretty aggressive then, so it's consistent with the snottiness of Stephen at this stage. In terms of the color of the shapeshifted stuff, I think that's pretty much the same as my explanation for why they're their own sentience. Because I kind of think they don't really have their own sentience. I think Stephen is so empathic that he's applying that to them because I think he's given them, and he's like, oh, they're just doing what they want, and like they seem to be not part of him. I think.
Yeah, I'll give you that. The colour thing I'm not so sure of though, because like it would logically be easier to change the colour and bend light than it would mass.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah. So, but I think the sentient thing is a really good point. And again, they could retroactively make me like this more if that comes back later on.
Yeah, I think that's 100%.
I'll give you that.
I would agree. And like I said, I'm only playing devil's advocate here to some of the points, just on the basis of like I think it's best to have try to have both perspectives here, because on the whole, I don't disagree with you. It's one of the weakest. I wouldn't go as far to say I hate it. I don't think there's a single episode of the show I hate, but there are episodes I like less. This one and Garnet's Universe stick out, which I guess we'll have to watch at some point as well. And I know people go, but Garnet's Universe is full of foreshadowing and references to anime. It's not a story though. You can't just throw a bunch of references and foreshadowing into a thing and make it work. It doesn't have a story. It's not good. That's a different debate for a different episode, I suppose.
There was a moment, fun con fact. We went to Zach's talk on the stage, which was also broadcast live, so you can find that online if you look for it. Mm-hmm. And at one point, someone brought up the crossover with Say Grandpa. And Dan just shot me a side eye, like, say
Uncle,
say
Grandpa.
Uncle. Yeah. Sorry, Uncle Grandpa, not say Grandpa. Uncle Grandpa. And Dan just shot me this like side look of like, oh, another one of your classic episodes.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. So I think there's, but to sort of counter some of the other things that I don't dislike about the episode, things that I think work. I think setting up Stephen and his dad playfully playing with water is kind of adorable. I like the way they're just sort of spraying each other and like, I don't know, it just feels very pally and like this early in the show, the fact that those two feel like they've got such a good relationship is super important. Because again, they could have easily gone down the route of the like sort of bum dad thing, because he's not living with him. But no, they set up a really sweet relationship with them, and that opening scene with them
I like that element.
Is kind of adorable. I like Amethyst trying to teach Steven. I like that she's mildly invested in his and the key word is mildly, because then one of my other compliments is I love that joke later on in the episode when Pearl keeps blaming Amethyst for everything that's going wrong, and you think she's going to object, and both times she just goes, "Yeah, that's fair." Which is
that was funny.
A great gag. I think. Go on, sorry.
I think I did get more from it this time. Like, I really liked that intro, and I did like some of the Amethyst stuff.
Yes. The whole shake it out thing is quite good, I think. The whole way, because it's such an Amethyst way to teach Steven to do it. She's just kind of like, no, you just got to relax. Like, you're too tense.
Nah, they were just trying to get, before, I reckon they had a list, and before Nicki Minaj was Taylor Swift, and they were just pandering and trying to get Taylor Swift to come in and do a voice. Please fact check me below if this episode aired before the song Shake It Out was even released. I am joking. I don't mind the Shake It Out stuff. I think it's, again, Amethyst teaching Steven is something we've not overly come back to. It's always been more Pearl. But I quite like seeing Amethyst teach him. And I know. I think there have
been a couple of episodes where they've specifically lent on the Amethyst teachers. I mean, Steven versus Amethyst for one. They go on the run. Like, I don't know. They've always seen
them doing stuff together. But I'm talking about specifically her kind of outright stating that she's trying to teach.
Well, in the very first episode, she's trying to teach him how to summon his shield.
Yeah, but my point is, like, that's not necessarily being explored further. So you can't point to the first episode, an episode that aired prior, as a counter argument.
No, that's fair. I don't know. I feel like they've always been like doing little bits of teaching, like throughout. But yeah, fair enough.
But I think more. I'm not denying that.
I think it sets up her character and their relationship quite well.
Yeah. But I just mean explicit. I'm going to teach you. Like, we even had a little kind of like graphic, like a little like, now it's a lesson sort of star like graphic thing, didn't we? Like, they've not necessarily done that with explicit teaching with Amethyst as much as they have with Pearl.
Yeah, that's fair. And this is obviously the introduction of Ronaldo, and he's kind of a little bit more playful here. His interest in Beach City being weird. I actually prefer this version of it to what we got when they further developed his character. You're right, it's inconsistent. You're correct. He'd be like, why? In, modern times. But I actually kind of prefer this idea of like somebody who's like, it's literally keep Beach City weird. Like, he loves that it's weird and he's excited by it being weird. Not so much necessarily the conspiracy side of it. And this hint of his character here, I'm more interested in seeing where that would have gone had they carried that through rather than making him a conspiracy guy.
That's an interesting point, yeah.
Because he's just sort of enamored by it here. And like I said, I agree with you. It did feel inconsistent. It felt like the Ronaldo we know in modern day would have serious questions. Whereas this guy seemed just like excited by it. One little cool bit of continuity though is in a later episode when Steven goes to Ronaldo's and he sees like his wall of like evidence that Beach City is weird. The picture he takes in this episode is on the wall.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and I remember at the time because when we watched that episode, I can't remember which episode it is now, but when we watched the episode where it shows up, I pointed it out to you and you were like, "Oh yeah." Oh no, you made a cat fingers joke. You made a
that sounds more likely.
You did the thing where you went silent for ages.
Yeah, it's good joke.
It's a great joke. Classic Dan and Chris banter. That was some classic banter, wasn't it, Chris?
Classic Steven University.
Yeah, classic stuff. I couldn't
believe I saw earlier today. I couldn't believe our very first episode of this has over 6,000 views on YouTube.
Yeah. I don't know how that's happened.
That is a lot of people that decided not to continue, isn't it?
Yeah, most.
That is about 5,000 people, at least on YouTube, not including the other figures that went, nah.
Yeah, I agree. So the music's pretty good. And now, the thing I actually want to talk about is related to some of the comments that you made originally. So can we cut to some of your original feedback, because it is different.
Yeah, of course.
Some of your original concerns are different to your current ones, and I find that interesting that you've not come to the same issues. So, I mean, the first thing I say is it is probably the weirdest episode of the show in the original podcast. I think you'd agree with that.
Yeah, I think so. Aside from Say Uncle and Garnet's universe, like you say, it's pretty weird.
Yeah, Garnet's universe, but they're telling a story, so it's in context. It's unusual, but it's like
that's true.
It's because they're telling a story, and Say Uncle's not canon, so you can get away with that. I think this is the legitimately the weirdest episode of the show, like in terms of what's physically happening in the real world. I think you get away with it a bit more when it feels less out of left field when it's a story being told. But I've got some quotes from you here that are cool. I think it's really interesting. So the first thing you just said, just as a summary, was, I thought it was truly awful. I was really offended. I really thought it was utter bollocks. That's the first thing you said. And then you said, yes, they've shapeshifted before, but I struggle with shapeshifting because I was like, this is weird. Now when anything happens, I'll be like, why don't you shapeshift into a lion? I don't understand why that won't be the solution for every foreseeable problem in the future. And I'm thinking maybe they're going to set limits. Nope. Literally a scene where she describes how they can transform into objects, into people, into anything. That's explicitly said by a character. Oh, that's going to be great for future drama. Cool.
It's not wrong. Like, if someone was telling that to me now, I don't know if I'd, like, as someone else, and I don't know if I'd have a defense for that point.
I had a defense at the time.
What was your defense?
Well, it's that not all the characters do it. I said shapeshifting's like learning to play an instrument. You know, some are better than others at it, and some do it a lot more and practice at it and are really good at it, and some aren't so much. Pearl, for example, they very much set up in this episode, doesn't do it. So it's not that all the characters can do it very well or turn into everything or control it that well. I said the other factor, of course, is they do use it relatively regularly, enough that you never go, why didn't they use shapeshifting?
Yeah, I guess not. And you could
argue Amethyst resorts to it all the time.
I think socially more than in battle.
No, incorrect. The beach episode, when she turns into a ball for Garnet to spike, like she stretches her arms out to try and catch Peridot when Peridot tries to fly away, it happens all the time.
Fair enough.
It doesn't happen like every time, but it happens enough.
Yeah, I doubt it happens the majority of the time.
Maybe so, but I think my argument was they do it enough that you never question it, because you go.
Well, no, you just use the phrase all the time. I think. I don't think it's all the time. I don't think it's the majority of the time.
Okay, maybe I misspoke on that occasion, but my point stands.
I don't want to make that point. I don't want to make that point too much though, because I really don't want poor Cram to have to make that spreadsheet. So,
yeah.
Don't do it, Cram. It doesn't matter.
Cram loves a good spreadsheet. And maths in general. Cram's math talk in the Discord has been.
It would be amazingly
impressive. Like it is.
It would be incredible if Cram already had that spreadsheet. If he was just like, "Here you go, guys. Battle won. Da da da. Weapons used. Da da da."
Yeah, I doubt that
Don't
exists.
do it, Cram.
Don't do it. Definitely don't do it. Not worth it. But my point stands, which is they use it enough, I think, for you to never question when they don't, because it's used enough that you sort of go. Yeah, they've used it when they've thought of it or when it's been helpful.
Yeah.
But
that's fair.
So that was my defense at the time, which was that not everyone can do it, and or do it well, and like we know Pearl can do it very well, but chooses not to now in later episodes. What did you think of that idea? Actually, that they sort of hinted at that here.
Yeah, I liked that, and obviously got that more. I like that Garnet was kept out of it, because obviously Garnet presumably can't shapeshift that easily without separating.
I hadn't even thought of that. That's probably true, isn't it? I hadn't really thought about that.
I assume so, but I don't have any kind of.
That makes sense, because you don't see Garnet shapeshift that often either.
No, I assume that's the reasoning.
Makes a lot of sense to
I
me.
like that they set up that Pearl doesn't do it. I almost thought you could almost like have a hint, but I suppose she does say other people, which is enough of a hint in a way.
Yeah, she's very clear about it, and she literally. And what's amazing is she very clearly states that she can do it, and by clarifying that so early, that makes her choice to not do it way more apparent. Because she specifically says, "Of course I can do it." If she'd been vague, you might just think, "Oh, she's not really good at it," and you'd never have thought of it twice. But she explicitly says.
That could have been like pride, though, couldn't it, or bollocks? But I suppose the fact that she explicitly states it and Amethyst doesn't correct her is proof that she can.
Yeah. To move on to some of your other criticisms, I don't know if I agree with this one. No real plot. He just walks around with cats on his fingers. I don't agree with that.
I think only the presence of the Greg stuff makes it anywhere near a plot, and I think with the Garnet bit at the end, and like fun, they don't overtly learn anything. They don't make it, oh, actually Greg can help with gem stuff. They just make it, oh, it links back to the water. I don't agree with it, but I personally think you could make an argument that you're putting more into the Greg scenes than the episode itself gives us.
I would agree with that. I totally agree with that. I think I am definitely applying my knowledge of their relationship to it and where it goes and some of the stuff they do with Greg later. But it's not that it's not present.
Which is
though.
Fair.
Oh.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's your, right. That's fair enough.
And now we'll get into your biggest criticism of the episode. The thing you talked about by far the most in the podcast, the original version of this podcast. And I would love to get your thoughts on this now, because you've not yet brought it up, which is amazing, because it was absolutely the crux of your anger the first time. I'm like, okay, the gems have gone. That's weird. Okay, fine. Then it's about him and his dad. Fine, great. Love him and the dad stuff. Always. That's consistent. So then he goes to his dad. That's really sweet. Because he just there you go. But because he just shakes and thinks that sorry, I'm not reading this real because it was quite bitty the way you were phrasing it, because you're obviously constructing the thought as you go. Because he just shakes and thinks and the cats appear, I'm thinking, so he's just got to fucking shake and think and the cats will disappear, and maybe his dad will bring that out in him. Maybe that will be the episode's resolution. The dad will give him the power to see. Maybe the dad can say something sweet like, "Come on, Steven, shake off the cats and me and you will play together and spray each other with water again. That'll be fun." Nope, the solution to the problem is fucking awful. Yes, cats don't like water, but when you spray a cat with water, it doesn't fucking evaporate. That would just make a cat angry. And then you go on to say it would have potentially been better to to make it dogs and give them chocolate, because that actually kills dogs.
Wow.
And then there's more. Yeah. It wasn't a clever solution, and I don't understand why they had the opportunity to do some really nice father-son stuff and had the solution they chose, because he doesn't even give his dad credit for it at the end when she's like, "You should have had more faith in Steven," and he's like, yeah. He doesn't say, "Well, actually, Dad did it with loads of water, and that's all it took. I'm by the ocean. Could have fucking jumped in." In fact, he did jump in earlier in the episode. Didn't disappear then, did they?
Yeah. Well, so I have that. I think all that does feed into what I've said about the Greg stuff not being too explicit, and the I brought up the Garnet thing at the end. I absolutely still agree with that. You could have, because doesn't he? You'd have to what? No, I think he's hiding the cats under his arms when they're in the ocean, aren't they? As opposed to putting his hands under the water. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think so.
But that's absolutely. I think that's absolutely spot on. They could have had Greg say something or do something that made him more instrumental. Or if you're going to do it that way, like have it be Greg's idea, but it's Steven's idea for the water. It would have been much nicer if Greg and him had actually worked together. That's an example of how they could have. Then you wouldn't be just putting your own stuff into the Greg scenes like that. That would be explicit within the Greg scenes. I do still have a problem with him not acknowledging. He'd rather give cat puns than acknowledge his dad's help.
The cat puns are quite funny though.
I think.
I don't
particularly
appreciate a pun, but I do find Stephen forcing them in really awkwardly to be quite amusing.
Yeah, that's fair. We used to know we had a mutual friend that loved a pun. It was quite funny because Dan would, die a little inside often when the puns were forthcoming.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely valid. Like they could have made Greg help more. They do that in later episodes. They play on the Greg, and like I love one of my favourite scenes is obviously the when Steven's upset because Connie's not replying, and Greg's like, I can do this, I can do the human stuff, and actually Greg's helped with the gem stuff, the whole band-aid over the thing, although, I have separate issues with that. But the notion of that being Greg's idea, they do that in the future. And I think it's a missed opportunity to do it here.
Yeah, no, the thing with that is I don't disagree with that. But at the same time, I don't necessarily, and it's weird because I kind of agreed with you in the original podcast, but this is the one thing my mind has slightly changed on. I wasn't that bothered by the water itself this time round. I still agree with the core of your point regarding Greg thoroughly. Like, I think that's absolutely true. They absolutely could have really driven the Greg stuff home, and maybe it's this show working out the balance of pushing the family stuff and how far they're able to actually get the sort of deeper stories alongside the silly cartoon stuff. Maybe they're still working on that balance here. Whatever, it doesn't matter. That I agree with that point thoroughly. I don't know if water is that bad of a solution on rewatch. Cats don't like water. You could by spraying them. If we're essentially working under the assumption that Steven has given the cats a level of sentience, but he's subconsciously doing that. So he's making them act like cats. So making them sort of unhappy makes them retreat, makes them go away. It's not perfect logic, but it's as good as anything fucking else. I don't know if there's anything that's like better. There's other ideas that are on par with that, but I don't know if anything beats that.
Yeah, Steven learning that the power comes from within and outright doing it himself. Because you're still applying even with the water, you're still giving the credit to Steven on a subconscious level, and like his brain is using the water as an excuse. I have him learn something.
I agree with that point because that Greg should have maybe had that thought if we were going to use it. But just physically, you're concerned that the water didn't make sense. That cats don't like water, but when you spray a cat with water, it doesn't fucking evaporate. That I don't necessarily agree with that point now, and I kind of did when we first recorded. I was like, yeah, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, physically speaking, practically speaking.
But I don't think. I think your logic for not thinking there's anything wrong with that is you're applying it to actually Steven's doing it subconsciously.
Well, if anyone does it, whether Steven does it, whether his dad does it, whoever thinks to put water on the cats, I just don't think that's...
No. I think in your head, it's not actually even the water. It's that Steven's brain is going, the water will work, and because Steven thinks it will work, he calms down, and it does work. I think your explanation is always going to go back to that, and therefore, they could have done anything. Don't make it half make sense. Make it Steven learning and Steven doing it.
Yeah. No, I agree. Again, I still agree with that notion. I just, like I said, I don't think the water. The water still doesn't strike me as the worst idea ever. I've sent you just so you know, I've sent you an image that I think you're going to enjoy, Chris. Have you got access to a?
I'll move away from the mic, but bear with me a second.
Yeah. It's. I think you'll appreciate this. Okay. Well, but let me just explain what I'm showing you. So this is the promotional image that was put out by the Creepiness to promote this episode, Chris. And I was just wondering if your love of Animorphs would trump your hate for cat fingers, because the promotional image for this episode is being styled as a Animorphs book cover.
I feel like I've seen that. I don't know if presumably we didn't discuss it on the original, but I do feel like I've seen that. I mean, anything that gives Animorphs recognition is good, I suppose.
Yeah. Do you remember those covers?
Yeah, and the little flip thing on the corner of the books as well.
Yeah. There you go.
Animorphs remains one of the few untapped resources for making rebooting into a movie or TV series. I'm absolutely convinced it will happen. Animorphs is a dark, gritty Netflix reboot in the waitings. Like
Sabrina style.
I am very surprised it's not already happened.
I'm not. I think you're overestimating its popularity.
I don't know, man.
The people who
But
are into
these
it
days-
have fond memories of it, but I just don't think it's quite the household name you think it is.
I don't think it is, but we're now rebooting shit that isn't. Do you know what I mean?
Sabrina was a big household name.
Yeah, but I'm not directly comparing. I said dark Netflix reboot. You know, I'm not.
Well,
directly
can you
comparing it
think
to
of another
Sabrina.
dark Netflix reboot that wasn't that big of a thing originally? Like Lost in Space was huge in its day. That was
True.
that was a household thing. Like everyone watched that. That was a water cooler TV show.
True.
I just don't think they've got I don't think they've scraped the bottom of the barrel enough yet for Animorphs.
Fair enough.
But anyway, so to answer my question though, Chris, does Animorphs make you? Is that swaying you either way?
No.
No. A little bit of triv then.
Yeah.
Unless you've got anything else
that
unless you've got anything to add.
No. I honestly I wish you could see me. Like I've got my arms crossed. I'm in like a legitimately bad mood, and I don't know, whether it's because I went in going, well, it would be best to hate it because that's what the people want, but I didn't. I genuinely still didn't like it. It wasn't about this. Isn't like I'm genuinely not doing it for comic effect. I think there are real issues with the episode.
So trivia. Estelle said in an interview that she thought this was the least child-friendly episode in the entire series.
I'd agree with that as well. We'd not talked about it much this time, but I think we talked about it at length last time. The ending is really creepy. The ending, like it's Halloween, like we're recording this the day before Halloween.
It's the music.
And it felt like we were watching a Halloween special of this show.
It's totally the music. Honestly, you take that music off
very effective.
and it's nowhere near as horror. Like that music just pushes it so far. You could argue too far. I don't know if I'd agree, but you could argue that.
And this is the timing of like I think before I was like trying to deny that the fact that I found it creepy was like a factor, but now partly due to Jess's reaction to the most recent episode of Doctor Who, Arachnids in the UK, where she didn't enjoy the episode and was like, I didn't enjoy it, I found them creepy. And I was kind of like, but you're meant to find them creepy. That's not a reason to say. You can't say it's unfair to say you didn't like the episode because of that when that's what the episode. Or no, she said it wasn't a good episode, and I was like, it's unfair to say it's not a good episode for that reason when like it's designed to be like that. And I think I did exactly the same thing as her in the original watch of this, which is be like, oh, it's too creepy. I think it's meant to be creepy. I think the more interesting debate on the creepiness is exactly that quote. Is it too creepy for children? Possibly.
I definitely think you can argue it. I don't think it is. I think it's right on the line. And I think if you wanted to pull it back, it would be the music you'd change. I feel very strongly that that's the case. If you wanted to pull it back, it'd be the music. But I think on the whole, I don't think it's too far. I think it's just right. I think it's not just right. It's just on the edge. Like if you pushed it even slightly further, you'd probably be in too far territory. Which is why why I wouldn't disagree with somebody arguing it was, because I could see somebody having their line in a slightly different place. But for me, it's right on it.
Yeah. Absolutely, because people also not only lines in different place, but lines on different things. Like the creepy is all in the visuals and the music, whereas like the one thing I very much had a reaction of, no, that's too far for children, was the Doctor Who episode with the plot about people still feeling things after they die, and the idea that everyone in the afterlife, if you could hear the dead talk, they would all say the same thing: please don't cremate me. And that is an incredibly clever idea, but I absolutely thought it was too far for young viewers, and I think that's a reflection on what my line gets drawn on, and the fact that was a psychological impact I value as more horrifying for kids than the visual impact.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Amethyst saying "chill it, dude" after she turned into a blue jay is a reference to Mordecai from regular show, which is pretty cool. Obviously, you don't watch regular show, but yeah, it's a good little nod to another show. Amethyst is eating the same brand of chips that Steven eats in the pilot. The remaining stuff all comes under continuity now, but there's actually a fair bit of continuity, which is interesting. Pearl shows her ability to project holographic images from her gem, just like she did in the episode Cheeseburger Backpack. So that's the second time she's done that. Amethyst shows off her ability to shapeshift. She first did this in the episode Together Breakfast. Amethyst transforms briefly into Purple Puma, who again appears in a later episode Tiger Millionaire. So I guess this was our first glimpse.
That's a nice nod.
PD now runs the deep fryer instead of his father. He was promoted after the episode Frybo and told his dad how he wanted to be more important to the business.
That's a nice touch.
So that's a little coda to Frybo, because in Frybo he wants to be more important than just playing the character, doesn't he? Outside the restaurant. He doesn't want to be the mascot anymore. So this is like the little tag to that episode, I suppose. Comes in the little later episode.
That's a nice touch and nice detail to the nice attention to continuity.
I would agree. Steven's cat finger picture that's taken by Ronaldo is seen again in Steven's Lion in Ronaldo's blog, and again in Story for Steven in Greg's van. I wonder how it ends up in Greg's van. Weird. In a later episode of Keystone Motel, Steven makes a comment referring to the events of cat fingers about the car wash brushes. I don't like those brushes. They feel weird on your fur. I forgot about that. That's in Keystone Motel. That's such a long time later that they reference it. What a great little reference. And he says fur. That would be such an old sequitur if you don't remember cat fingers. I haven't seen cat fingers.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
That's great. In Too Short to Ride, Stephen briefly turns one of his fingers into a cat to show Peridot, then panics and sticks his hand in the ocean to get rid of it. That's true, I remember that. In Rock Ronaldo, Stephen again turns his finger into a cat to show Ronaldo that crystal gems can shapeshift. After that, he converts it back by putting it in his mouth. I didn't realize how often this episode got referenced again. Is that why we ended up doing so many?
Yeah.
Is that why
That's
did
nuts.
so many jokes where you've gone silent because it kept coming up?
I mean, it seems that way.
Yeah. Pearl's line "Don't bite off more than you chew" is referenced again in the episode Garnet's Universe. Great, tie these two episodes together. That classic double bill. Greg's behaviour while Amethyst shows off to the universes hints at some discomfort with shape shifting, which he openly expressed. Oh, Greg's behaviour while Amethyst shows off being a cat at the beginning. Greg's a bit
I did clock that, actually.
That's pretty clever, because obviously, in maximum capacity, he says, how I feel about shapeshifting to Amethyst. So that's pretty cool.
I did spot Greg got funny, actually.
There you go. And in A Single Pale Rose, the gem sloop is present in Pearl's gemstone. That's the boat
thing.
The
gem what?
It's the boat they go on. It's the special kind of boat they sail away on.
Oh, okay.
So Pearl must store that in her gem the rest of the time.
Yeah, that's a cool notion.
Yeah. Either that or they were just looking for objects to fill Pearl's head with, and they just went through the back catalogue of, art artifacts and just grabbed random ones. But I'm still okay with it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Either way,
that's everything. So what? How do we? So we're still feeling. I mean, if you were to actually like scale your anger and dislike in comparison to how you recall feeling the first time, slightly better about it with a bit more context from the show.
Yeah, I feel slightly better about it. Yeah, but it's not a nasty surprise, so that's an element of it. So yeah, I'm not angrier.
Right.
But I'm probably not as angry either.
Okay. So you've softened slightly. Okay. So
softened a little bit.
Come back in a couple of years.
Because I'm not partly because of the creepiness thing. And that might be timing of having just had a similar discussion about, when something's designed to be creepy with Jess after watching Doctor Who. So
yeah. I think I think what people need to do is be excited for our third rewatch of this in a couple of years' time, where you'll like it just a little bit more.
It could easily reach that point.
It's interesting to see where this goes now. So yeah, okay, well that's yeah, I think that's about right though, isn't it? That's I think that's
the episode covered.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I predicted you'd be. If someone had asked me to say like, where's Chris gonna land with the Cat Fingers rewatch, I'd have said he's still not gonna like it because there's no way you could go from hating it so much to liking it. You were never gonna come in today and be like, you know what, Dan? I was pleasantly surprised. I think that was an unlikely scenario in the best of circumstances. So I think the most likely was you just sort of liking it a little bit better with context of the rest of the show, but still having the same or roughly the same issues with it. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
In terms of
comment.
Go on.
No, go on.
Well, I was just gonna say comment below about theories.
Yeah. Any theories you've got about the show or theories you've heard that you want us to discuss? We've had quite a few submissions now on YouTube, which is good.
A couple in the Discord too. I will say people have suggested ones we've already discussed, which makes me laugh because I just think like recently too, like somebody, like two different people have suggested that each diamond represents like the mind, body, soul, or whatever. But I think we talked about that in depth during Legs from Here to Homeworld. I think I talked about that theory there.
Yeah, I think we talked about it a fair bit. Yeah.
But we'll talk about it again. I don't mind.
We'll cover it again. Yeah.
Good.
So yeah, comment below with any theories, and we will see you next time.
And of course, Onion is White Diamond. We all know this.
That's on my list of theories to discuss.
It's an extremely popular theory.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you could argue that. We'll have to talk about how it would work if it was to be true.
Yeah. That was the joke that Zach made as well, wasn't it? Did he say that as a joke on the podcast? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
I feel like he said something like, oh, maybe I'm thinking of the the movie's going to be a Steven Universe remake of Die Hard thing.
Yeah, that was like legitimately like when I kind of forgot that had happened when I was until I was editing the interview. Yeah. And then to hear him say, yippee-ki-yay, Mr. Falcon, I was like, oh dear Lord. That was
amazing because it just made me wonder what else he said in that voice. Like, he was able to make it PG so quickly that it felt like he'd done it before. And if he said that before, what fun has Zach had with Steven's voice? Like, what sentences has he reenacted with that voice,
Oh, yeah. I bet you there's so many recordings in the Cartoon Network vault of him saying outlandish shit. That they're just like, well, that's never getting out of the vault. Because that's what I'd do.
Until they accidentally put it on a promo.
Before they accidentally put it on a promo. There you go then.
There's
cool.
Cartoon Network's one. There we go.
We'll leave it there. So thanks very much for listening. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
We'll speak to you guys next week as we discuss your theories.